of Orange City Urban Renewal Commission. It's June 1st, 2011, and that is roll call, please.
Commissioner Shaw. Commissioner Nocita.
Here.
Commissioner Roth. Commissioner Smith. Commissioner Yates. Commissioner Peterson.
Here.
Commissioner Neely.
Here.
Commissioner Mum. Here. Commissioner Edgar.
Here.
And Chair Walters.
Here. And do we have any citizen comments this evening?
None.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 3, future agenda items. Eva? Anything city staff wants to share for future agenda items?
Some follow the suggestions. Well, I guess, Commissioners, what I have presented in the past was some future items which I thought should be possibly considered. I wanted to bring them up. I put them out in a document. I know that I sent them off to Dan, and I presented them previously, but I reworked some of the wording. But it's all about, it could be also incorporated into the goal setting session that's coming up, and wherever it fits the best. But I believe that there are issues that need to be reviewed or thought out by all.
Yeah, thanks for putting that together. Anyone else?
I would just say that the meeting scheduled on the 22nd, I will not be able to attend, and I don't know if there's an alternative time for that. And that's all for future agenda item, I guess. Yes.
I think that you folks are going to try to find an alternate date.
Yeah, we'll try to find an alternative date.
Yes.
I'm not sure this is the time to bring it up, but just in terms of these, the budget and this grant process, I'm wondering, I don't know the answer to this question, has there ever been an evaluation of the grant, of the storefront grant program, and these grant programs that we've done in the past, whether or not they work, how well they work?
Oh, how well they work, or the guidelines themselves were redone, but not the...
I'm just wondering if there's been ever an evaluation component. Sometimes when you do grant programs, as part of the initial grant design, you tack on the end some sort of evaluation component, so at the end of some period of time, you evaluate what you've done. I'm just kind of wondering if we ever sat down and looked analytically at what we've been doing with grants and loans specifically. And if we haven't, I'd like to suggest that we sit down and talk about that at some point, because evaluation is a real important part of administering grant programs.
That would be a good discussion item for the goal setting.
It might be, but I just, in terms of future agenda items, I think it's something I'd like to see us talk about at some point.
Okay. So moving on to the agenda item 5, public hearing. Item 5A, resolution number UR 1101, adopting the urban renewal budget and declaration of tax increment for fiscal year 2011-2012. And we have a commission report. Okay, we won't make it a tradition then.
Anyway, I just had to say that. Okay, before you is the resolution to adopt the urban renewal budget. What we had a proposed budget. We had a committee meeting on April 26th, and we made 4 changes at that point, where we reduced the reimbursement to the city for the economic development position by $40,866, And we also reduced a $48,000 transfer to the city for street cleaner by $48,000. And there were a couple of other expenditures for $40,000 and $100,000 respectively, one for remodeling of this building and the other for development incentives. So all those totaled $228,866, and so the effect of that was to reduce expenditures and increase contingency. Now, there was your meeting last week, you discussed possibly putting $200,000 into materials and services just in case this visioning project came along. So what I gave in front of you there is what it looks like with the $200,000 added back for that. So in your original packet you have without the $200,000, and with the handout shows what it looks like with the $200,000. So there's still $193,000 in contingency versus $393,000, and then we increased material services, like I said, by $200,000. So the total budget is $705,600, and we're going to collect the division of tax, which will be about $1,800,000. So that's what I have to, before you open the public hearing, or you have questions.
I hope that we accept this budget.
We need to have a public hearing open before you do that.
Or do we even move to that?
I believe I opened the public hearing. Oh, okay. We'll open the public hearing. Thank you.
I have a question regarding the 200,000 for visioning. If the 200,000 for visioning comes out of the urban renewal budget, is that available to be used as a visioning project for the entire city?
No. We have to budget that separately within the city budget.
And then why is it in there?
Isn't that in the contingency, isn't the 200,000 in the contingency?
Well, you have one, the original packet that has it in contingency, but I also gave you this sort of pro forma here that has it without what it would look like if you took it out and put it up there. Well, it's just part of contract services.
Can I ask you a question about the, well, actually, let's see if there's any public comment before we have commission discussion, if that's okay.
Okay. I think you're next. No public comments.
There's no public comments, so we're just gonna, okay. I have a question about the McLaughlin Boulevard project. Is that the one that was mentioned from the Clackamas River Bridge to Dunes Drive? I thought that was being funded by ODOT. Why do we have?
That is my understanding, and I don't have all the facts, but without Nancy here, I'll take a shot, was that is for that phase of the McLaughlin Boulevard Enhancement Project from Clackamas River Bridge south to Dunes Drive. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done in the design of that and whatnot, and that was our share, it's my understanding, that the city needed to put forward as part of that project.
So we have a memorandum of understanding with ODOT.
Not yet. It's a placeholder right now until we get that accomplished. And just because of the projects that have come down, that work that needs to be done with ODOT and Metro has slid as we're doing the jug handle project. So it's in there as a placeholder so that once we get the staff available, we can go ahead and get that project moving forward.
Is that going to take place sequentially after the jug handle?
You know,
Or are we going to have the one at the same time?
There generally matches expected on projects that come from, I believe it's called MTIP funding out of Metro. That's been true on phase one. That was true on the Highway 213 Beaver Creek intersection. These projects that have come to Metro has some level of match. I don't know this actually has yet been approved out of Metro, and that's probably why it's in the placeholder position, but we'll find out right now. Just occupying time till she got here.
Timing of phase 2 Main Street sidewalks project? Is that, oh, the 9090, we will not start construction on that till after the drug handle is over. We hope to start the design and the intergovernmental agreement with ODOT before that. And we have to reserve the money though to show we're committed in order to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with ODOT.
Nancy, how much is ODOT's share of this project?
As I recall, their share, can I go look it up, James, because I don't want to get the wrong number. I hadn't reviewed that right before this meeting.
Just a ballpark figure, if you.
Let's see. I think their share is about $2 million.
There's no federal funds coming in through.
This is
through
federal
Metro?
funding. This is federal funding through Metro.
Okay, it is. So it is.
So
Okay.
this is our flexible funding in the region. Yes.
Can I listened to I wasn't present at the budget meeting, but I did watch it on the video, but I can't remember from watching what the discussion was regarding the $35,000 on the Amtrak station. I understand it was because when it was done, it wasn't completed. I'm really kind of shocked that figure wasn't in the original amount. And I'm worried that that money was allocated in the original amount, and then through cost overruns or inability to complete it by the developer, the contractee, it was just not finished, and here we're stuck for $35,000 more. And I'm just wondering, I'm not comfortable on that figure.
But my comment was, I think I did comment on that, and I would have thought that generally you build a facility, but the potential leaser of that facility may have expectations in terms of how to make it usable, and I believe that's what it was.
The contract with F&F Structures was for moving the building over, setting it on its foundation, finishing the exterior, and constructing the parking lot. This is for tenant improvements. Inside. Exactly.
Okay, so this would not be spent then until we had arranged, made some arrangement with a tenant and use that to tailor the interior to the tenancy.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this is a discussion we still need to have here regarding the uses. We thought we'd start in that conversation in the next month or two of finding out where you want us to pursue in terms of renters, uses, and then see who's interested and bring it back to you. And then we would be going into a lease agreement if we find somebody and we'd want to tailor the interiors for their needs. It could be more than one tenant.
Mindy?
I'm going to do something that I hate to do. I'm going to suggest another line item and I'll explain it. The city commission has in its proposed budget $100,000 for the Ermitinger House, and that's intended for the restoration. I view that as being specifically for the restoration. I'd like to get a placeholder in here for the cost of potentially developing and writing grants. It may be that we can put this something together just on agreements with other organizations, but that may not be able to happen. And I was going to suggest a $5,000 placeholder for grant writing for the Ermitage. Should be necessary. It's within the organization.
Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
Yes.
Was that a suggestion from the contingency?
Yes.
Okay, and did you say 5,000? We both started with didn't we? Is that really your thing, I guess? I think again. I want to suggest that maybe rather than restricting it to just grant writing, because we're going into uncharted, unknown territory with regard to trying to get federal partners to join us, you may want to just not restrict it, and other than to say, for the purposes of restoration, or just identify it for expenditures related to Ermitinger, because
One of it is things that we would probably have to do that wasn't specifically tied to the restoration. The other thing is
you can identify that generally as Ermitinger expenditures, because what if there's a match for something and it's not grant writing, it's something else? I don't think 5,000 is going to be enough to move anybody any direction. So if you really want to do something, you might want to raise that figure significantly and just identify it broadly to be Ermitinger. And that gives us flexibility to use it or not use it. So that's all.
Well,
Commissioner Nocita, or, yes.
I support what the mayor's proposed. I would like to make a specific suggestion that those funds come out of the rehab program line item where we've already budgeted money, because that's what Ermitinger is all about, is rehabilitating that house. And as far as rehabilitations in the city, it seems to me that the Ermitinger house is the #1 priority. So whether we just say that within that line item, the Ermitinger is the top priority, or we just say take 25 out of that and have 125 for rehab and then 25,000 for Ermitinger, I'm fine either way.
Of course, yeah.
I agree with Doug and Jim, and I think that actually it's two different programs. The grant writer is an actual person, and the rehab is working on the building. Different programs. My 2 cents.
So would you favor breaking out another line item on the grant writing and say finding it?
Well, I think taking it out of contingency, 5,000.
Commissioner Hayes, please.
The grant writing could easily fall within this $688,000 of contract services. And,
that's true.
and what Jim mentioned could easily fall under the rehab without adding a line item.
Yeah.
Oh,
Could it not?
yes, that's exactly. Yeah, and actually you have enough contingency here and enough other unexpended contract services, because we don't have, for example, Leland, that if Urban Renewal, and this is another great conversation maybe for your goal setting, if Urban Renewal wants to be a bigger participant in helping with Ermitinger, I'm thinking that's a great idea. Well, frankly, you have a little more flexibility, because pro rata, at least, you've got a lot more contingency as a percentage than the city commission does. So you could certainly do that from either of those sources.
Well, I'm satisfied with that conversation, and we're not putting it as a line item. I think we've indicated if in the goal setting section we look at it, determine its level of importance, and I think that's sufficient for this discussion. I don't think we need to move forward on it.
Okay. I'll second.
Another comment from Commissioner Edgar.
I think we've been blessed with Christina Gardner-Robinson with what she's been doing, and this is really coming out of staff with her passion for historic preservation, and what she's capable of doing right now has been just short of amazing. And so it's been, I would almost think that if we got into something from what I'm seeing her do, and coming out of that building department, I would see us helping her, because I don't know that we have anyone else that's as passionate and as effective running around close by doing an excellent job. And I would love to see us think about how we could help her do the job that she's been doing.
I agree. She's been doing a terrific job for many years. And this, all of our staff. Thank you. Any other comments before we?
I believe we have a motion to adopt the budget as amended with the $200,000 visioning removed from contingency and moved into contract services. Do we need to reference the resolution at this time? Okay, should I read it? Okay, okay, thank you. Okay, oh, I'm so sorry.
Commissioner that already, I think, seconded it.
Hold on, can I raise a point? I'm not sure this. Oh, okay, sorry. Okay. Just on the visioning, is the 688 figure the proposed contract services plus $200,000?
That includes 200,000.
So the $200,000 for visioning is included in that 688.
Right, you'll see the approved column there, that's what the budget committee approved, like 400,000, and they added the 200.
Okay, perfect, all right. Second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so do we need to read the budget message then?
Do you want a roll call?
Let's take a roll call.
Commissioner Roth?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
Commissioner Mom? Aye. Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner, Commissioner Yates?
Aye.
Commissioner Edgar?
Aye.
And Chair Walters?
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you for letting me know, appreciate it.
I just remember we had to do this about 2 or 3 times last year, so I was really hoping we could do it correctly this year. Okay, so I guess we have this agenda item 6, City Manager's Report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to follow up on that item. At the last meeting, you were concerned about our records retention policy, and we did check that. It applies across the board to all of we're doing that already. We're retaining those records in the same way for this group as we do for the City Commission. And as staff, we're under the direction to do that from the City Commission, so unless you wanted us to stop, you don't have any reason to change your policy. But you could have a separate policy, but it would be absolutely redundant in my view to do that, so just wanted to report that. And then I also want to ask Dan Dretlow and Tony to give you a little update on the Cove Parker apartment condo site.
The other thing I was going to give a brief update on was the Rivers project. As you recall, there were approximately 7 issues that were outstanding in terms of negotiation points between the Urban Renewal Commission and CenterCal Properties. And one of the bigger issues was the commitment of the developer to purchase the Parker piece. And I've met with Fred Bruning and the property owner. Have had several conversations with them. Have urged the Rivers to seriously consider getting a contract so we can move on to the other items. And those meetings occurred approximately 2 weeks ago, and we're still waiting to hear back from CenterCal. So I just want to give you a brief update on that. On the Cove project, the developers are proposing some changes to that project, and I wanted to briefly update you on that. Probably the most significant is, if you recall, the project was divided up into several phases. The first 2 phases covered the whole site and covered construction of all the infrastructure as well as the Esplanade and the park area along the cove. The third phase was the first phase that actually created some increment. And those were, in the agreement, those were supposed to be the property owned by Parker. And that area is located between Main Street and Interstate. Those apartments, as you know, he's had issues finding financing for the construction of his apartments. More recently, he is proposing to, instead of building the apartments, build the condos on the URA property, the Renewal Agency property. That requires two major items. That requires an approval from you to change the site, because as the agreement's written, it's the Parker site, not the URA site. So that would require approval from you.
And could you point out on the map behind you what you're talking about?
I'm confused.
And why?
Okay, so the apartment site, again, page 3, which was the original part of the agreement, is this area here.
Mm-hmm.
Directly in back of OC Shopping Center.
Yeah.
And that is privately owned, it's not owned by the agency. And rather than develop that first, they're now proposing to develop the condo area, which is, this property is all owned by the URA. So again, because that's different than the original agreement, that has to be approved by you. And the reason I bring that up, it creates a couple of complications. One is, as you recall, for this agreement to be reinstated, the DDA, in order for that to be reinstated, one of the requirements for them is to go through a land use process. And they've been working on that. The issue is, if they want to apply for a land use, they have to have a signature from the property owner. And now that the property owner is supposed to be shifted from a private owner to the URA, that means you have to authorize the signature. So that's one issue. The other major issue is there's reference even in the reinstatement agreement that if changes occur in any of these spaces, the increment created has to be as much or more than what was in the original agreement. That means if they want to switch from building this to this, we have to have proof that the increment created by the condos is as much or more than the apartments. So that begs the next question. Do we want to get involved in hiring an appraiser or a market specialist to do that analysis?
I'm not answering your question. This is this report, so you're not actually asking for any action on this tonight.
Well, we wanted some indication on where you want to go.
All I know is the little bit I understand from the nightly business report. This isn't that much, but it seems like the growth in areas of residential is in apartment complexes and less in condominiums. And we would want to make sure wherever's built there is sold. We don't want to be stuck with something that isn't saleable. And so I think what they have to, I don't know which is worth more, but my concern is less which is worth more, is whether in the current marketplace it would be more likely to sell condominiums than it would be apartments.
What they've mentioned is that they would build them as condominiums but lease them out as rentals initially. Because of that fact, and that is true, the apartment market is good. So that's what they talked about.
What's their rationale for requesting this? Are they explaining what they're using?
My guess is that they probably feel these may sell easier because of their waterfront. That would be my guess. They haven't told me that, but that would be my guess.
And thus they believe they would more easily get financing for those because of the waterfront use as apartments.
And my question would be, why would it be up to us to have a study done to look at the feasibility rather than him have a feasibility study done?
Well, that's part of the question.
Well, they do have an appraisal. We think we'd want to authorize us to verify that appraisal. So that's what we're requesting. Not
Yeah, well, I think what happened is their lender actually required an appraisal.
Yeah.
And we weren't sure how independent you would view that appraisal. I mean, the lender, when they were appraisals in the old days, they just arbitrarily, magically matched whatever the purchase price was. We've all lived through that. I don't think that happens anymore. But so it's kind of your comfort level if you want an independent appraisal, or if you want to rely on the one that the lender ordered, we can get a copy of that, show it to you, if you're comfortable with that. I think for me too, the next step is to have them come here and talk to you, make sure you're comfortable with the why and wherefores and all of that. But I think I wanted Dan to update you on this latest wrinkle because it was a pretty significant change as far as the owner. Do they have time to?
I guess that was going to be the next. In some of the back story why we're bringing this forward at this point is, obviously we have the October 1st for the reinstatement of the development agreement. As Dan stated, there's not only changes that need to be brought forward to be reviewed and approved by Urban Renewal Agency, but then we've also got need to make changes to the approved concept development plan, as well as to the detailed development plan for the condominium project itself. So we still have a land use process that we need to go through. So that's why we're trying to feel out what you think you need so that we can continue to move this project forward if you so desire.
I don't know the details of the project well enough to know the answer to this question. Even in the original plan, with the agency owning the dirt underneath the condos, is the agency going to continue to own the dirt after the condos are built? How does that work?
The whole idea is that initially the apartments would get built, and then once that happened, the developers would have option to purchase the URA land.
Are they proposing to purchase the URA land after the zoning gets approved and after all this happens? They will purchase it before they construct, after they construct, and just the purchasing?
It's after they construct.
Right.
And is there a price already agreed upon on that? Or
No, there's a process.
Negotiate that.
Well, they actually get a credit.
It's spelled out in the DDA in terms of the appraisal of the property, and that's offset, and then they purchase that. Because what it is each of those buildings are set on a separate tax lot. That then
the condo.
I'm sorry, yeah, the condo buildings are going to be set on separate tax lots, and then once the buildings are constructed, they're going to have a new assessed value. That process is spelled in the DDA for their option to then buy that property.
There's a formula in the DDA for setting the price?
Mm-hmm. There's a process in terms of appraisals and third-party appraisals and that type of.
Mike, under the DDA, you're asking to purchase of the Urban Renewal Agency property. The actual waterfront property would be public. Right?
But the structure on it is transferred.
Do they actually have title now to the Parker property? Or is that sales agreement contingent upon them getting financing for their
agencies in there? I think there's an
title still in Parker then.
I believe so, but I'd have to verify where that's at.
Mr. Edgar.
We're really turning over some new rocks here, really creating some new thinking. And tomorrow, I'm going to be part of a group is going to be traveling with Randy, looking at a lot of enhancements. How can we be responsible with the environment? And I think that we cannot close any doors on being responsible with the developer, but yet at the same time, if this thing really changes dramatically, it might provide us some opportunity where some of the work that David asked for earlier in trying to save trees and where we had this study done to try to be a little bit more responsible for the environment. This might be an opportunity as we're doing some of this reevaluation of everything to better set into place some of the things which we want that are proper and responsible for environmental protections.
So we've been working with PPS on implementing the findings from the David Evans report. So we've been out there identifying trees along the water line for saving. So that's part of this land use process, is to go back and amend the approved water quality resource report to implement. We've gone out and tagged the trees, and they're incorporating that into their grading plan.
I would like to, I think it would be responsible for the Urban Renewal Commission to be brought up to date with what has happened.
I agree with that strongly. Yeah, that's a good idea.
I'll just let you know that I'm also going on this tour as well.
We have, our next Urban Renewal Commission meeting is in 2 weeks, and currently we have time there, so we could use that meeting to get into some more detail, and if you would like, I could have the developers attend.
Personally, I'd prefer to wait to hear from the developers until after we independently and without pressure or influence have our goal setting session on our own. I would wait till after the goal setting session to have that conversation.
Because I would just, I'm sorry.
I think it might be useful to hear that for our consideration. We may not want to make a decision until we've had the full discussion, but I would like to be as informed as possible, so that I can use that information in a decision.
I was going to say, this might be helpful. You know, if you decided to defer the decision, so be it, but at least to keep this moving forward, to get the information in front of you. And that would include, you would be looking at the land use application as well, which would include some of the questions that you have. But I guess I'd request that we can kind of get this moving forward prior to your goal setting. If the commission decides that they don't want to take action until after their goal setting, so be it. But at least we can get this going, because otherwise we're another month out, and we're up against that hard October 1st deadline, unless the commission would wish to extend that, which would alleviate some of the pressure and timing that we're facing. Just, with that land use process, I can only do it so quickly. And then we still need to get building permits pulled by that October 1st deadline.
Wait a minute. We got to go through the zoning process and the building permit before October 1?
Yes. So they need to.
So does the reinstatement agreement, it's been a while now since we reviewed that. Does the reinstatement agreement require that even the land use approvals be obtained by the October deadline?
They need to have pulled a building permit by October 1st.
Okay.
I'm agree with Nancy. I think I'd like to be informed as well.
I understand that they're going to be coming before the CIC next Monday.
Correct.
And kind of doing a little brief unveiling of what their proposals are. So there will be kind of an initial look-see on it, and will give us a better understanding.
So I guess what I'm hearing is we'll line them up to get here to the next available as quickly as we can. And then on the third-party verification of the appraisal, would you like us to move forward with that?
I think it's still premature.
You may not need to spend the money. If you, after you come here and your questions are resolved, whether you make a decision that night or you wait another month, there's really two issues. One, are you amenable to the concept of this somewhat significant change they're proposing? And before you spend money on a proposal, you might want to find that out first. So maybe it's good to just hold off on that either way. If you end up supporting the concept that they're proposing, then you can decide whether or not you want to rely on the lender's appraisal or not.
And I guess I would also just point out that for the land use process, when we approved the concept development plan for the project, it had 8 phases. And as Dan explained, the first 2 primarily deal with the infrastructure, redevelopment, redesign Main Street, Agnes, the mass grading along the cove, and the replanting. Phase 3 was the actual development of any buildings coming out of the ground. And they're not proposing to change the uses, they're proposing to change the phasing. So in the approved concept plan, phase 3 was the apartments, so we need to go back and amend the concept plan to make phase 3 the condos, just because it's spelled out specifically in the concept development plan. But then we would also be making minor modifications to, as I stated, the water quality resource report. There'd be a new mass grading plan for the site, and then we'd also be doing the detailed plan on the actual condo design, because that wasn't done, because that wasn't going to happen until phases 4 or 5 of the original proposal.
Commissioner Smith.
I wasn't going to bring this up, but I guess one of my concerns is the fact that you kind of alluded to the condos, which are no longer going to be condos in a sense, because they're going to be rented out. So we're talking apartments. I mean, in my mind, so that's a change in use. I mean, I think the only negative part to me from this for the whole project was the apartments themselves. And so now to see that they're all going to possibly be apartments, that's a huge change for me. So I'm really uncomfortable on that.
There is a big difference legally between building condos and building apartments. When you build a condo, you file your plat. Each one is individually titled, and each one has a different mortgage, and each one you can conceivably at least, so that they're easy to lease after they're rented to go into the private market. So there is a difference.
I understand, but they're still going to be rented.
And we're still on reports, and means that all these great questions that are coming out will be great for PPS when they're sitting here in front of you at your next meeting. So we have between now and then to actually think of some more questions, and I think that with that, the staff doesn't have anything else to add.
Anything else? Any final words? Okay.